Hey, thank you so much for joining us at our Crosspoint Church podcast. Now, if you're new to our podcast or maybe new to our church in general, we're just a bunch of messed up people who don't have it all together, running after a heavenly leader who loves us and meets us right where we are. We hope this message encourages you, builds your faith, and strengthens your confidence as you continue down this journey of what it means to know and follow Jesus. Enjoy this message.
All right, who's excited about some dinosaurs this weekend? Yeah? Hey, welcome again to Crosspoint. So excited that you are joining us this weekend, whether you're here in the room or joining us online from wherever life finds you. Let's make some noise for our online crew this weekend. My name is Abbie, if we've not met, and I'm real pumped to be here with you this weekend. I love this series. I love getting to unpack some of these biggest blockbuster movies and the spiritual threads that we find in and throughout them. And I'm especially excited because it's been a while since I've been up here in this spot. I've had some things going on, had a baby and stuff, so Scott, I don't know what your excuse was, but just kidding. But no, really excited to unpack this movie, Jurassic World Rebirth, this weekend. And, I know there's been some mixed reviews. Great cast though, right? And in my house, at least, there has been a lot of excitement about this movie this summer, not necessarily because they're all seeing it, but because my kids, like most kids, love dinosaurs. My son, who is about 7 now, he literally for every year of his life that he's been old enough to make a Christmas wish list, the number one thing on there has been some kind of dinosaur toy. To the point that this year I was like, hey buddy, just so you know, that's not a Christmas requirement. You can ask for other things. You don't have to keep asking for more dinosaur toys. And he's like, but I want more dinosaurs. So lots of excitement in my house around this movie. Anybody seen it? Anybody seen this yet? Yeah, okay, awesome. We got a couple. What about, make some noise if you've seen any of the Jurassic Park, Jurassic World movies. Yeah, okay, yeah. So we've got some bases here. This movie, Jurassic World Rebirth, is actually the 7th in the series. And really all of them have kind of the same basic premise. Basically, someone creates a dinosaur, they find an island full of dinosaurs. They try to make money off of those dinosaurs, and then at some point they lose control and things go very, very wrong. This movie in particular, Jurassic World Rebirth, picks up the story where the last one left off, but it fast forwards a little bit, and it picks up in this world where dinosaurs have been living among people for a while now, but they've gotten to this point where they've struggled to survive anywhere except for some of these islands right around the equator. And so what it does is it follows the story of really 2 different groups of people who find themselves trying to survive on an island filled with the most dangerous dinosaurs on the planet. Sounds like a Jurassic Park, Jurassic World movie, right? And one group that we see in this movie, they're kind of what a lot of the main characters are. This is a group that goes to this island intentionally. They go on a mission to find some samples for this pharmaceutical company who's trying to develop a drug to fight heart disease. And this group knows, at least to some extent, the danger that they are stepping into. But they've decided that the risk is worth the potential payout for them, with some differing motivations, but in general, that's what they're there for. The other group, though, is this family who ends up on this island completely by accident after a sailing adventure gone wrong. And both of these groups, as I'm sure you can imagine, run into some moments when things go wrong, sometimes very, very wrong. And so today, what we're going to do is we're going to look at how we can learn from some of the experiences that we see played out in this film for times in our lives when things are going wrong as well. We all have these, right? We have times of trouble and tension. Some of you might be right in the middle of one right now. Sometimes, just like these groups, when things go wrong in our lives, sometimes it's the result of some decisions that we've made. We've kind of walked ourselves into that place. And then there's other times where things go wrong because of circumstances that are completely out of our control. And of course, there's a range of what we mean when we say things are going wrong in our lives. At times, it's relatively minor in the grand scheme of things. Like, it's really annoying in the moment, but if we zoom out, we know, we'll make it past it. Things like a roadblock in a work project, or a conflict that pops up in a relationship, or, those days where everything just goes the opposite of the way that you want it to go. When my oldest was a newborn, we had one of those days in our house that I will never forget. It started with my husband on his way to work, popping not one, but 2 tires and getting stranded in like sub-zero temps. I think it was the coldest day of that winter. Then our fridge stopped working, so like all of our food started to spoil. Then somehow the lock on our front door broke in such a way that I physically could not get the door open to leave the house. You can't make this stuff up, right? And the problem with this was that my 2-week-old son had a doctor's appointment that we had to be to. So the only other way for me to get out of the house was to go out of our side door, trudge through the snow, then hop the fence that was frozen shut with the car seat with my 2-week-old to get to his doctor's appointment. Then later that day after we got back, I fell down the stairs, like not just a little trip, but like tumbled down the stairs. It was just like the worst day ever. And at the end of the day, one of our friends brought us a meal, a chicken pot pie. And I remember we got our plates full of food. We sat down on the couch upstairs. And I said out loud to my husband, like, all right, this is where we turn this day around. I can feel it. It's getting better from here. And then there was a crash downstairs in the kitchen as our dog had found a way to pull the rest of the chicken pot pie off of the stove. And we came down to a floor covered in splattered pot pie and shattered glass everywhere. She was having a great day, but we were not. Some days are like that, right? Everything just seems to go wrong. There are other times in our lives where things go wrong, and they go very, very wrong. It's a lot bigger deal than just a shattered chicken pot pie on the floor. There are other times where we find ourselves looking at a day where we're trying to pick up the pieces of a shattered marriage or a shattered dream, where we're struggling through how to process a diagnosis that we've just received or that's just been given to someone that we love, where we're navigating financial crises or a loss in our lives. Whichever situation you might find yourself in those everyday annoyances or in those life-altering kind, there are some principles that we can draw from this movie that I think can help us to kind of pull ourselves out of the everyday moments or to find a lifeline that we can hold on to in those bigger ones. And all of these principles actually line up with some advice that we see in a letter that the Apostle Paul wrote to one community. Now, a little background, you may be familiar that Paul spent the latter part of his life traveling around the Mediterranean world, sharing about the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, and establishing these communities who would continue to spread that message after he moved on to new places. And then he would write letters back to these communities, back to these people that he'd met. And makes up a good portion of the New Testament. And when we read those, sometimes Paul seems like a hard guy to get along with. I think he actually probably was, because a lot of the content of those letters is him addressing conflicts that had popped up, ideas that had gotten twisted, fires that needed tended to and resolved. But the letter that we're going to be looking at today has a bit of a different tone, because this is one that Paul wrote to people who he refers to as his crown and joy. These are some of Paul's favorite people. Now, along his journeys, Paul didn't necessarily encounter dinosaurs, but he did encounter some pretty Jurassic World-sized problems. He'd been shipwrecked 3 different times, bitten by a snake. He'd been beaten, he'd been flogged, he'd spent a night drifting out on the open sea, he'd been run out of more towns than he could count. Paul knew what it was like to live through cold, sleepless nights and hungry and thirsty days. He'd been in prison more than once. In fact, this particular letter he writes from a prison cell. See, Paul knew what it was like for things to go wrong. Very, very wrong. And apparently the people in Philippi that he's writing this to did as well. He says pretty early on in the letter, "For you've been given not only the privilege of trusting in Christ, but also the privilege of suffering for him." Sounds like such a privilege, right? He says, "We're in this struggle together. You've seen my struggle in the past, and you know that I'm still in the midst of it." And so we're going to look at just a few of the nuggets of wisdom that we see in this writing. This book of Philippians is this letter is packed full of so much good stuff. I would encourage you, if you've never read through it, maybe this week you want to spend some time kind of diving through all of it. But we're just going to look at a few of the things that Paul has to share that also kind of mirror some things that we see in this movie. 5 things that we can do when things are going wrong. The first is to gather a trusted team. One of the primary reasons that Paul writes this letter to the Philippians is he wants to thank them for some ways that they have supported him. Now, what you need to understand about Paul is that he was not a person who liked to accept help from people. He would actually, as he was traveling to these cities, it would have been very reasonable for him to ask these communities who he was kind of ministering to support him, to kind of feed him, house him, that kind of a thing. But that's not what Paul did. He actually was a tent maker. He would set up shop in each of these places so that he didn't need any handouts from anyone else. But now he's in a different situation. Now that Paul finds himself in prison, he needs a little more support than he's used to. See, at that time, there was no state-provided food supplied for people who were in prison. Either you had some friends who would bring food to you, or you didn't eat. And so Paul had a home team of people that he would reach to, not only that he had helped, but also that he was kind of more vulnerable with when he needed this kind of support. And these people that he's writing to in Philippi are some of Paul's home team. In Jurassic World, we see this too. The first thing that Scarlett Johansson's character does is after she receives this mission to go to this island, is she starts to gather all of these trusted people to build a team. We all need a home team. People who we show up for no matter what time of day it is, no matter how much we have going on. The people who we are reaching to when things are going wrong. And this can be tricky for us, usually for one of 2 reasons. Many of us, we either draw this circle too large. We want to be there for everyone, or we want people to feel close to us, and so we draw this circle really large, and we try to include all of these people in our home team. But then we come up against our own limits. We realize that we've got limited time, limited energy. We can't keep all of the promises we're making. Or we find ourselves getting burned because we've gotten too vulnerable with too many people. Then on the other hand, some of us draw these circles too small. We don't let enough people into what is really going on in our lives, and we just try to carry it on our own. And so maybe for you, a next step this week is just to take some time to evaluate who is on your home team, to make an actual list. As you do this, it may help you clarify where are some places that you may need to reallocate some time and energy. Maybe as you do this, you'll realize that you need to do some work to add a few people to your roster. It can be really easy when life is going pretty smoothly not to prioritize friendships. But when things go wrong, you become very aware that you need other people in your life. So don't wait until those moments to build a trusted team. About 8 years ago, I started getting together with a group of girls one night every week. We started with Tuesdays, we've kind of shifted over time. Now it's Wednesdays, so I was out way too late last night. But the idea was, what if we just carved out a set time on the calendar every single week, whoever can make it, that we're just gonna be together. And when we started this, really many of us didn't know each other that well. But over time, these women have become a core part of my home team. We have walked through so many difficult things together. I tell people all the time that the decision to just start doing that, carving out that weekly time with them, is a decision that really has saved my life. And the thing is that we've discovered along the way is that if we wouldn't have put in the time, week after week, to build relationships to a depth that we knew how to show up for each other well, that we probably would have walked through many of those things alone. But instead, we got the gift of going through it together, of holding each other up in the midst of it. See, this is why we push small groups and joining serve teams around here, because we want everyone to have people to turn to when things are going wrong in your life. I wish I could tell you some of the stories that are unfolding right now at Crosspoint, people who are going through some really difficult times, and how we've been watching people in their small groups or people that they serve alongside show up for them in these really beautiful ways to support them along the way and carry them through. I wish I could tell you some of the stories as I looked this week at the lists of who was serving on different teams throughout our different environments. So many people who we know are walking through some really difficult circumstances, who would have every reason to say like, nah, I think I need to take a step back or take a break. But these are people who are like, no, I want to show up for other people, despite what's going on in my life, despite all of the things that are going wrong. It's a really special thing, which is actually another theme that we see play out in this movie as well. That when things go wrong, there really are two different kinds of people. There are those who turn inward and focus on protecting themselves, and then there are those who turn outward, who take the risk to sacrifice for the sake of other people. When things go wrong in our lives, it's natural for our focus to narrow in on what we need. There's nothing worth blaming about this. But in this movie, and really in every Jurassic Park and Jurassic World movie, there are these characters who embody something bigger, who remind us the value of choosing a harder path, of resisting the urge to get caught up in your own self-interest. Paul speaks to this directly. He says to the Philippians, "Let each of you look not only to your own interests, but to the interests of others." He goes on, urging them to emulate the character of Jesus with one of my favorite descriptions of what God is like. He says this, he says, "Let the same mind be in you that was in Jesus, who though he was God, did not regard equality with God as something to be grasped or held on tightly to, but instead he willingly emptied himself. He took on the form of a slave. He became human, humbled himself to become obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross." What a God who would willingly empty himself, take on that kind of hardship and suffering for our sake. And what Paul is saying in here is, be like that. Do the opposite of what feels normal. When everyone else around you is looking out for number one, choose instead to look first to others, even when it costs you, even when it might walk you into some more things going wrong. To which we might be like, I mean, what do you mean here, Paul? You mean like when I've got the bandwidth, when I've got the capacity for that, like not when all of these things are going on and when I've got so much on my plate? To which I'm pretty sure Paul would say, no. I mean, live like this, especially when things are going wrong. If you keep this kind of mindset, this others first mindset, it will keep you grounded in the purpose that you were made to live into. Even when your life feels out of control, you can actually experience the gift of living into a story that's bigger than just yours. Paul's suggesting this mindset shift that seems counterintuitive, but it may actually be the key to finding our way through hard times. There's another mindset check that we learn from the movie. When things go wrong, watch what you say about yourself. One of my favorite moments in this whole film is really a side story. It's this moment that comes in an interaction between the dad of the shipwrecked family, whose name is Reuben, and his daughter's boyfriend, whose name is Xavier. And the first scene where we get introduced to Xavier, the boyfriend, he is like, right out the bat, like just this kid that has a pretty terrible attitude. He's lazy. He's not pulling his weight. He's just one of those characters that, in my mind, I'm thinking like, yeah, this dude's definitely getting eaten by a dinosaur, and we might enjoy it just a little bit. But then there's this moment pretty early on after they've encountered some scary stuff where these two characters are kind of on their own together for a moment. And Xavier begins to open up a bit. He starts to admit to Reuben all of the ways that he sees himself as a screw-up. He starts to call himself lazy and say, my parents have always told me that's true about me. And he talks about how he wonders sometimes why Reuben's daughter is even with him, what she sees in him. And in his mind, this dad is like, yeah, I've been wondering the same thing. Like, my daughter is way too good for you. But that's not how he responds to him. Check out this quick clip of what he says.
Other people may talk shit about us, but we don't have to do the job for them.
Other people may talk stuff about us. Stuff, kids. That's what it said there. I don't know what that beep was about, but we don't have to do the job for them. And actually what he says next is, otherwise it becomes true. In other words, we all have these labels that have been placed on us, things that have been said to us and about us. But just because something's been put on you doesn't mean that you have to keep picking it up. It doesn't mean that you have to lean into it, live into it. But often when things are going wrong in our lives, that's when these negative scripts get the loudest inside of our heads, right? Those are the moments when we start to replay all of the things that other people have told us are wrong with us. And sometimes we allow those negative messages to take us from a place where things have gone wrong into a place where suddenly things are very, very wrong. Because we allow those messages to talk us into giving up or to talk us into numbing out. We start living into the lies and spiraling downward. So when things go wrong, we've got to right away get diligent about what scripts we are repeating about ourselves. One of the phrases that I reach to often when I find myself in this kind of a headspace and I need to reframe is this phrase, I guess I haven't learned that yet. It comes from a book based in this idea that when we hit obstacles, instead of assuming that we don't have what it takes, that we're not enough, we can actually instead give ourselves permission to be a beginner, to recognize that there's actually value in encountering things that we have yet to learn, to seeing places where we can continue to grow. It's actually a really good place to be. Paul says something similar in Philippians 3, after explaining how he's let go of all of these markers that he used to hold on to in order to measure whether or not he was good enough. He says, I gave all that up so that I could know Christ personally, experience his resurrection power, be a partner in his suffering, and go all the way with him to death itself. I'm not saying I have it all together or that I have it made, but I'm on my way. I'm reaching out to Christ who reached out to me first. He says to this Philippians, friends, don't get me wrong. By no means do I count myself an expert in all of this, but I've got my eye on the goal, where God is beckoning us onward to Jesus. I'm off and running, and I'm not turning back. I love his honesty in this moment. As he says, I don't have it all figured out, but I've seen enough. I've been through enough to be convinced that this is a mission worth going all in on. There are still things that I don't understand, but I am choosing to build my life on the foundation of a God who has been with me in every struggle and who has promised to bring new life out of seemingly hopeless places. That's what resurrection power means. This idea that God can breathe life into places that we are convinced are dead. Paul goes on, so let us keep focused on that goal, those of us who want everything God has for us. Which leads to another thread that we see in this movie. When things go wrong, you have to be willing to shift your plans, but keep your focus. At one point in the movie, when pretty much everyone else is panicking, Scarlett Johansson's character has this great moment of leadership where she gets honest with them. Like, guys, our circumstances are not what we thought they would be. There are some things that are going very wrong. And yet, our mission has not changed. We know why we're here, so let's keep going. Let's keep moving toward it. In Philippians 4, we find one of the most commonly known and commonly misused verses in the entire Bible. When Paul says, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. We're about to see this all over the place in football season as winning players are like, we won because I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. But that's not exactly what Paul really means here. If you kind of look at the wider context, if you look at the original language, you'll see that what Paul is really saying when he writes this is, I've learned how to shift plans as I go. I've learned how to adjust my expectations, how to be content with whatever I have. I know how to live on almost nothing or on everything. I've learned the secret of living in every situation, whether it's with a full stomach or empty, with plenty or with little. For I can endure everything through Christ who gives me strength. I really love the Message version of this verse. Eugene Peterson translates, whatever I have, wherever I am, I can make it through anything in the one who makes me who I am. Some of us might need to write this one down. Put it on a Post-it note. Put it somewhere that you will see it as you go throughout this week. This is the kind of strength that God wants to offer you. And there may be some things in our life that need to shift in order to adjust to the circumstances in front of us. But could it be that in that tension, we might actually find God's activity in our lives? We might actually begin to see ways that God is shaping us, forming us, moving us forward into something new. Now, God doesn't cause things to go wrong in our lives, but He does meet us there. This community is filled with stories of people who would tell you the ways that He has. This is my story too. In the midst of our pain, in moments of confusion, when we're struggling to know what to do, God is there, offering us strength, offering us His presence, showing us not only how to endure, but how to find gifts in the midst of what's difficult. There's one scene in this movie that reflects this in a pretty cool way. You guys want to watch it? You guys want to see some more dinosaurs? All right, let's check this out. Don't you love that, sprint towards this scene? Actually, it plays out longer. It's not released, so we can't show you the rest of it yet, but I wish that we could, because it's this beautiful moment where these two characters, Scarlett Johansson and Jonathan Bailey's characters, are just completely in awe of these beautiful creatures that are right in front of them. For a moment, they forget all of these troubles that they've been through. They forget the fact that there are certain challenges still ahead, for sure. They forget the warning that there are predators that eat these things. I was finding myself anxious, keep moving. But what this scene demonstrated was actually something that I think is really important. When everything is going wrong, we've got to take time to fixate on what is good, to carve out these moments, to stop long enough to notice. Paul says it like this: summing it all up, friends, I'd say you'll do best by filling your minds, meditating on things that are true, noble, reputable, authentic, compelling, gracious. Look for the best, not the worst, the beautiful, not the ugly, things to praise, not to curse. A few months ago, I started using this app. It's called Gratitude Plus. Anybody familiar with this? No. Okay. I think Annabelle is. She's not out here yet. But it's really cool. You can kind of see an image of how this works. Basically, you can invite people to do this with you and create these different circles. You can have a family circle, a friend circle, whatever circles you want. And what it does is it prompts you every day to just take a couple of minutes to list 1 to 3 things that you're grateful for, or things that made you laugh, good things that you've noticed around you. And my friends and I have started doing it together. And it's cool because it gives us these glimpses of each other's everyday lives that we would not normally see. But more than that, what it's done for me is it's started to develop this new filter in me. It's helping me throughout the day to pay more attention to the small, good things in the everyday. Especially on difficult days, this practice of noticing what is good can be a lifeline. It's a discipline that we need. So I want you to think for a moment. As you think about your day or your week, what are some things that you've seen or experienced this week that were good, beautiful, compelling, worth stopping to notice? You may want to use these next few moments to use the doodle space in your weekly to start making a list of those things. Maybe your next step this week will be to commit every day this week to just carve out a few minutes to name the good that you see on a notes app on your phone, on that gratitude app, maybe in a journal. Maybe you'll invite some people to do it with you. This is a practice that seems small, it seems trivial, but especially in times where we're having trouble finding a handhold, finding our way through, these moments, when we carve them out, can really make a huge difference in helping us find our way through. As we wrap up today, I would love to pray for you in just a minute, and the band's got one more great song for us. And I want to let you know, if you are in a spot right now where things have gone very, very wrong, some of the words in this song that we're about to sing may feel hard to believe, may feel difficult for you to sing out loud. I would encourage you to maybe try singing it anyways, to see them as a prayer, as a way that perhaps you can help take a step toward experiencing what Paul was talking about when he said, tell God what you need, thank him for what he has done. Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. Let's pray. God, I think we all want that kind of peace. A peace beyond what we can manufacture on our own. A peace that doesn't make any sense. And so, God, I pray that you would help us in these moments to begin to find you in the midst of the struggle in front of us. Would you show us some of the places where we may need to make a mindset shift so that we can begin to see our circumstances a little more like the way that you see them? That we might begin to see ourselves more in line with the truth of who you say that we are. God, would you teach us to endure by leaning into your strength? Amen. I invite you to go ahead and let's stand together. I hope that as we sing these words, that you might find yourself drawing some strength from these things that we are singing aloud together. Let's do this.
Thanks so much for joining us today. Take a moment to follow our podcast on your preferred platform, and be sure to download our app to stay informed on everything happening here at Crosspoint. And if you like what you heard today, don't hesitate to share it with a friend that might need to hear it too.